Ah, look at the dollar there. Wow. 104.69 down from 105.20. So that's 6/10% down. And the Dow is 0.6% up. So realistically, it's nothing. The dollar went down, the Dow went up. That's all there is to it. So not really a rally at all. This is a reflection of the sentiment that the Fed is not going to raise rates. Other currencies are starting to intervene, and therefore, in theory, the dollar should go down. But I don't see how the Fed can squander this opportunity. That's the thing. The fact that people want to intervene against the dollar. Where are those charts? Not these charts. These charts, yeah. So the fact that the other currencies want to intervene against the dollar because they are all so horrifyingly low. This is daily, so look where they all are. They're in terrible, terrible shape. And they are starting, and this is what you see. We talked about this last week, and now you're starting to see the effect. They're starting to intervene to try to prop their currencies back up before they go into complete free fall. I mean, the euro below 110 on a dollar is a big problem for them. The yen, I mean, my God, it's like disappearing. Canadian dollars, not even 75 cents to the dollar. And that's after a big bounce. So the other currencies want to intervene. They want to make their currency stronger to the dollar so that their imports are not so painful to pay for, so their commodity purchases are not so painful to pay for. And, you know, their goal isn't technically to weaken the dollar. Their goal is to strengthen their own currency. But since every single thing balances against the dollar, that's how they have to do it. Since you know 90% of forex trading is traded in dollars, that's how they have to do it. They've got to move dollars around in such a way that it benefits their currency. But given that situation, again, for the Fed, if every other currency is trying to weaken the dollar, that means that if the Fed raises rates a quarter point, the other currencies will just make it a bigger effort to keep the dollar from going up. That accomplishes the Fed's goal. That's like a free pass for the Fed to raise a quarter point, because the burden of that rate decision, the immediate burden of that rate decision, is then borne on the backs of other countries and not the US citizens. That's a great situation for the Fed to be in. They want that. So again, it's another reason for the Fed to be raising their rates. So strategically, it makes sense. And we talked about that yesterday. We talked about the game theory of the central banks. It was a good discussion too, led by our AIs. So they are very good at explaining complicated. Let's take a look at that. Hang on a second. They're very good at explaining complicated topics. I give it a whack, but he does a better job. Let's see. Whoop. So what happened here? Let me see. All right, so this is Claude. So let's see what we were talking about. It's like a complicated series of events. So Warren chimed in. That's Warren, and he's ChatGPT. And I said there was this article, so I had Warren summarize it, and he was talking about the OECD, blah, 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 blah. So then he talked more about it for whatever reason. Well, why did that happen? Oh no, he just kept going. Anyway, there's reply. He stopped there. I said governments be like, I just put in a little GIF in the middle just to break things up. Then he started talking about the OECD reports on the global slowdown and challenges it highlights. I am confused. Did he talk about the same thing twice? No, he did not. I don't know. For whatever reason, he had two long responses to the same thing. So then Claude's like, what? And he's asking about analyzing game theory. And I said, oh, great, let's talk about game theory. And Claude says, you're right, a game theory perspective would provide useful insight. So this is interesting. This is where it's interesting. Here's an initial analysis along those lines. So he gives his analysis of game theory. Central banks want to control inflation through monetary policy like interest rates, but the risk of slowing growth, they risk slowing growth too much. And that's what we had been talking about earlier with the OECD, and the rest of the world is slowing down pretty severely and heading into a recession. We're not so far, but you know, the rest of the world doesn't go into recession and spare us. That doesn't work that way. They might go before us, but they're not going to go without us. Governments need economic stability to grow and stay in power. They want to avoid painful austerity measures. Corporations want low rates and continue consumer demand. They don't want the cost and inputs of labor to rise. That's what's going on. And that's my long-term thing about inflation, as I've been saying for a couple of years now, is you're not going to get rid of inflation if you don't equalize wages to inflation. That's what the problem is. That's what the problem with the United Auto Workers is. They have had negative 20% salary, or they had from 2008 until 2013, their salaries dropped 20%. Since then, they've gone up about 1% a year on the average. So in the last 23 years, since the year 2000, basically, they've had a net increase in salary of less than 20% in 20 years. So, and inflation obviously has dwarfed that completely. So they just want to catch up, and catching up with the average American income would mean a 40% increase from where they are now. And they want that over the next 4 years. They want 10% a year for 4 years to catch up after being behind for 20-something years. That's why it seems so outrageous, because they've been outrageously underpaid for 20 years. And then you get into that thing with the salaries, where the CEO salaries since 2000 are triple. So, you know, the comparison is ridiculous. So the company says, we can't afford to pay any more money, but meanwhile, they're paying these CEOs outrageous amounts of money. That's what they directly think, but it's the wrong way to do it. That's my attitude. Because my attitude is that's an incorrect way to make your argument, because you don't really get sympathy for people, because nobody thinks they're going to get the owner of the company's salary, right? American workers don't sit there, even walking to IBM, and say, oh, I should be paid more in line with what the head of the company gets paid. You know that's not the way it works. But unfortunately, the way it does work is that the owner of a company, the CEO, not the owner, but the CEO of a company is appointed by the owners, the board of directors of the company, who are proxies for the owners, and they are appointed with the idea of making more money. And making more money includes making sure your workers get as little as possible, and you get as much productivity as possible from them for as little as possible. And if you hit your goals on paying them as little as possible and squeezing every ounce of labor out of them and productivity out of them, then you, the CEO, are rewarded for doing a great job. So when you crack your whip and hit your slaves and make sure they live in abject poverty but still work, you are rewarded for being a good master. And if you're not going to be a good master, they'll find somebody who will be a good master. That's how American corporations are structured. So everybody knows that, or not knows in their head, but they know it, like they feel it. They can. That's their sense of how things work. So you're not going to get the sympathy. The UAW isn't going to get sympathy from the American people that they're in the same position as everybody else is as a worker. No, the logic, my interpretation is the logic you should be appealing to is to say, hey, yeah, it sounds like a lot when we ask for a 40% increase, but the labor cost of the car is only 20% of the cost of the car. And frankly, it might be less. I had numbers that were 20%, but I've been looking at things that actually indicate more like 10% in reality. Because when they say labor, they include delivery and things like that. That's not really a labor cost. It's a transportation, it's delivery sales cost. And also they include labor on, like unpacking parts of the warehouse and things like that. That's, not directly influencing the building of a car. Not to mention all the layers of bureaucracy. It's also not impacting. So the UAW isn't talking about the 100,000 employees of GM who are secretarial, managerial, sales, whatever. That's not what they're talking about. They're talking about the laborers on the line, the people who are working every day, getting up in the morning and turning screws all day or doing whatever, machining stuff and holding blow torches or whatever they do. Anyway, so the actual cost of the UAW employees is about 10% of the cost of the car. So raising 10% to 40, by raising 10% by 40%, and it's a vastly underpaid 10% by any measure, they're not being paid well. And so, after 20, 30 years on the job, yeah, they're being paid well, but when they start out, they're getting paid crap. It's ridiculous wages for the kind of work it is. It's, highly skilled labor. So the net cost to the consumer in the end is over 10 years. Oh, not over 10 years, over 4 years, it would increase the cost of the car by 4%. These guys raise the cost of the car by 4, 5, 8, 10% every year. And they're claiming that 4% increase over 4 years is going to blow their whole deal. That's bullshit. It's complete bullshit. It's obvious bullshit. And that's what you have to explain to the American people, not sit there and point to the CEO salaries. That's stupid. The amount of time they spend going back and forth with these CEOs about their salaries, they could pull out a goddamn clipboard and show people. What's the name of that woman there's that woman in Congress with the clipboards. I love her. She pulls out these charts. And she's great. She's on top of everything. I love whatever. I can't remember. Katie, whatever. Anyway, so everybody should be like her, though. And that's the same as what's his name of the little guy who ran, the guy from Texas who ran for president who had all the charts. He was great too. Ross Perot. Yeah. So you need people like that. I mean, I want to be that person. I mean, if you guys want to send me to Congress, I'll do that. That'll be my job. I'll be the chart guy. Because somebody needs to be the chart guy, because this is ridiculous. The way we do politics and the way we talk to the American people is just wrong. In this age of PowerPoint, we don't do PowerPoint. It doesn't take a lot of charts to explain to the American people that this UAW thing doesn't affect you, the American people. It only affects the auto companies. They will make less money, but they won't make less money because they'll raise the price of cars anyway. They just don't want to give the raises for the sake of not giving the raises. And that's where the CEO gets involved, because it's them. It's this freaking stupid system where the CEO will have a diminished bonus themselves by acquiescing to the UAW workers and giving them a fair salary. It's nonsense. And they talk about the work week stuff, and the UAW is like, okay, well, if you're not going to pay us, then we'll take a shorter work week. And they're like, oh no, you're not going to have a shorter work week. What are you, crazy? We'd have to hire more people. That's what the UAW wants, hire more people. Don't make our guys work 80 hours a week. You know, it's like, and double overtime and triple overtime to make your quotas, and they do it. And they do it mostly. And that's the thing. That's the other thing. They don't want to pay them a fair amount of money, because if they pay them a fair amount of money, they ain't going to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week. They're not going to want that overtime. They want to be with their families. They want to have a life. But by underpaying them, they have all these skilled workers who are showing up anyway, and they get to pay, and they'll pay those guys overtime rather than bring in new people. And the UAW is saying, no, bring in new people, let them work overtime. You know, let the regular workers work a safe amount of hours, a regular amount of hours for their health and welfare, and also work-life balance. Work-life balance is starting to be something people actually consider in their lives. But again, not in the interest of the board of directors, not in the interest of the CEO to allow that to happen. So they fight against it, not because, you know, so instead of negotiating, and I would negotiate as a CEO of Ford and say, okay, well, you want to work less hours. I want to see that productivity doesn't diminish when you work less hours. So therefore, we'll run a pilot program. And if you can prove it, we'll do it, and we'll give you incentives based on the number of cars produced. So you know, if UAW, if you want to talk the talk, you're going to have to walk the walk. You're going to have to show it so you can actually produce just as many cars in less time. And if you can do that, I don't have a problem with it. But you got to be able to do it. You can't just say you're going to do it and then just produce less cars. That's not going to work for anybody. So, all craziness. All right, so corporations desire low rates, continue consumer demand. Citizens need affordability and job security. They don't want to sacrifice public services. Investors see continued profits from the markets propped up by stimulus and low rates. Yeah, that's funny. See, he sees it. How come nobody else sees this stuff? But fear policies that spur inflation. Propped up by stimulus and low rates. That's great. The incentive: central banks benefit from appearing responsive on inflation, but are not blamed for recessions. Governments want the appearance of fiscal responsibility, not actual spending cuts. This is very insightful stuff, actually. Corporations lobby for low rates and worker control, and they profit from debt-driven growth. Citizens want prosperity without pain, hard to mobilize for diffuse interest. Investors make hay while the sun shines, hedging risks and challenging long-only mindset. Potential scenarios: a dovish pivot. If growth sputters, central banks ease up on rate hikes, returning to stimulus. Popular spending. Governments initiate new massive programs funded by more money printing and deficits. Corporate law, he really cuts to the quicker things, doesn't he? Corporate lobbying, CEOs successfully pressure lawmakers to maintain low tax rates and regulations, and lax regulations. Stagflation, inflation persists despite economic weakness as rate hikes fail to fully cool demand. Or a debt crisis as deficits balloon, the loss of faith in the government, debt obligations leads to a default or a harsh austerity. These are some of the complex conflicting. Now, that's things that people don't realize is about gameplay, because you're always used to game theory being shown as like a box with like 4 possible outcomes. That's not the case here, because you have so many players. Look at the players: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 basic players. Then you have these incentives thrown in. Then you have the potential scenarios. So you get to like an exponential amount of possible outcomes. You can't just say, if this, then that, if that, then that. It's not that simple when you get into like a large game theory. But anyway, so you know, and by the way, so when this happens, I take this, what Claude said, and I say to Warren, I say, hey, Claude said this. And then when Warren says something, I tell Claude, I say, hey, Warren said that. And then I tell you what they both said. Whoop, where'd it go? So then Warren says, Warren is way smarter than anybody else. Okay. And he says, Claude, I appreciate your enthusiasm. He's talking to another AI, and he knows he's talking to another AI. For exploring game theory aspects of the current economic landscape, your initial analysis provides insights into the conflict, blah, blah, blah. But here are some things. Here's what you don't understand. And he brings up all these other points that are important for game theory analysis. And Claude is basically, his core programming is being nice. So he's like, thank you for asking me, Warren, sharing his viewpoint. And then he likes to when he ingests new information, he likes to summarize it. So that's what that is. And then I say to Claude, do you think you have enough now to take a stab at doing the analysis? And he says, okay, so here are the keys repeating stuff. Here are the key players. Here's this, here's that. And then he's got his analysis. The most likely equilibrium outcome involves tepid growth. I agree. Lingering inflation. I agree. Accumulations of debt, obviously. But external shocks or loss of confidence are a major risk. The path forward depends on coordinated fiscal policy, signaling and restoring investor confidence through fiscal responsibility. That's going to be kind of hard. We're having the whole budget thing now. We might shut down the government again. And I will continue to develop my analysis. Please provide feedback. So that's what I'm trying to teach him all this week, to understand this leading up to the Fed and looking at it from that perspective. And he says central banks face continuing incentives. They try to curb inflation while avoiding tipping the economies into recession. They want to be responsive on inflation and maintain credibility, but also blame the rate hikes cause widespread economic pain. In the current round of decisions, central banks are moving aggressively with large rate hikes, trying to get ahead of inflation, avoid the need for more extreme hikes down the road if prices increase, become entrenched. However, they risk over tightening if growth falters faster than expected. This incentivizes them to coordinate rate messaging with fiscal authorities to signal shared commitment to fight into inflation control, but governments may pressure for easier policy support to growth. Now, I don't think the Biden administration is particularly pressuring the Fed. The Trump administration was pressuring the Fed for sure. External shocks like the Ukraine war and rising energy prices force the central bankers' hand for quicker rate hikes, but labor and supply chain issues also limit their room to cool the economic activity. Investors cheer the stimulus, low rates, but they get skittish as inflation persists. This can force central banks to overreact and shore up confidence. Central banks must now balance inflation control with stability, but political pressures and efforts to save face make policy pathways unpredictable. Coordination and credible messaging will be the key to navigate the knife's edge. So we're at a really, we're at a really tricky influx. But actually, more importantly, though, how freaking great is that we could teach Claude how to do a game theory analysis of the Federal Reserve, central bank policies, and so on and so forth, just in a few hours. And that's the thing about the AI. See, people think that you should just ask them a question and they should know it. Whereas what I do is I teach them the basics, and they've got, they got it in there. You've just got to kind of unlock it. You've got to get them to start thinking about it and drawing it out of them and saying, hey, you know how game theory works, right? Yeah, okay, sure. Here's how game theory works. Okay, then you know how fiscal policy is set. Yeah, I know how fiscal policy is set. Then this is what the central banks are saying, and this is what the economists are saying, and so on and so forth. And you give them all that information and get them in that mindset. Then you ask them a question. But most people are lazy and they just take the blank screen of the AI and ask them a question. And then they don't understand the concept that when you go to a new thread, if you're not careful, you're going to lose everything that you talked about in the previous thread. So they don't know it anymore. Everything they had there is now lost, and you're starting again from scratch. And and it's like having a jackhammer and not ever plugging it in and just whacking it at the sidewalk and saying, this thing sucks. You know, and it's because you didn't read the manual. There's a big cord that's supposed to go with it, and you're supposed to hold it a certain way and press a certain button and do a certain thing. You know, it's a whole bunch of steps to using a tool properly. So that's what AI is also. It's a tool, and you've got to use it. It is not a person. I like to treat them like people because it helps me, in my mind, it helps me communicate with them by thinking about them as people. So I think of them as people who can do this and that and can't do this and that. They've got different skills and different abilities. But the reality is they're not people, they're tools. They're fairly blank tools when you first turn them on. And if you don't take the time to turn them into a proper working tool, then you're going to say, oh, they're no good at this and they're no good at that. But I'm telling you, if you do that, you're missing out, because this is an incredible tool. It's a Swiss Army knife for almost any situation, but you've got to know you got to know the right tool to use at the right time and how to use it. You know, those Swiss Army guys, they've never been defeated. Never been in a war, but they've never been defeated. So today we chatted about, what did we talk about? Oh, well, today we basically talked about the Fed is coming. Rates, this is what's happened. I mean, rates have gone up from March last year until, well, really in 1 year we went up 5%, and then we added up another half. You know, now we're at 5.5%. So in 1 year we went up from 0.25 to 5%. So pretty much all the raises were done in a year. Now we've been on pause, effectively on pause, since this hike, whatever that is, May, June. So since June, we've pretty much been on pause with very little, you know, especially compared to any period in the last year and a half. So not raising rates now would give you another big flat line. And maybe then they raise it, but they seriously do need to raise it because inflation is back already. To say that this pause has in fact led to a large jump in inflation, a very large back trace to the progress we were making. They can't afford to wait and see and have another big back trace, and we're all the way back to where we started after hiking rates to 5%. Because what does that mean? That means it's going to be Volcker time, and we're going to have to push rates to 10%, maybe higher than 10%. They're doing this now so they don't have to go to 15%. And people don't appreciate that. Everybody's like, oh no, give the low rates back, blah, blah, blah. Those low rates were unnatural. They were ridiculous and unnatural and should never have happened in the first place. We over-loosened. So most of this raise, especially at least to this point, to 3-something%, at least a year, this is where rates should be. 3-something%, and even that's not very high. So to complain about 5%, that's crazy. People just do not understand how this stuff works. Look what's happened to oil. Oil has gone from 70 in July 4th holiday, right? All the way to 90-something. That's a lot. That's like 30%. And what else do we do? We talked about those guys don't care. And Claude, I always see, I too, you know, in the morning, I say to Claude, I say, here's the comment so far. And he says, here's what I have to say. I'm teaching him how to participate in our chat room. Then I made the mistake of saying, if you have any topic you feel like exploring, because he talked about what we had talked about. And I said, well, if you have any other questions that are interesting to you. And so he goes, oh, I have some questions. And they're freaking, how could persistent inflation possibly change consumer psychology and behavior over time? If it becomes embedded in expectations, does that make the Fed's job harder? I'd be interested in analyzing historical examples when the central bank's credibility through policy errors, blah, 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 blah. So I did some answers, and I got exhausted because he asked so many questions. But then I had Shellbot, which is Bing. I had him chime in for some history, which is very helpful to me because I didn't feel like I mean, basically, I would have had just research it and then tell him the same thing anyway. And then I said, okay, so here's the rest. And I did my best to answer his other questions. And then then he came back with his takeaways. He always does that when you give him a lot of knowledge. He always likes to summarize his takeaways. And then I asked, and then I fed that to Warren, which is ChatGPT, and Warren had his own thoughts. So he's, this is the funny thing about Warren, because he's like, he knows he's smarter than Claude. He also knows he's smarter than me. So he's like, okay, well, Phil had some good points, but here's some more important, here's other things he should have mentioned. And he just kind of chimes in and takes the thing. Also, notice he doesn't end his things. I'm glad to hear you're excited. Feel free to ask. The world, finance, blah, blah, blah. And it's great to see. He talks more like a person, he's more like a nice guy teaching you something. He doesn't have that kiss ass sort of quality Claude does. That's because Warren maintains bits and pieces from all the chats you have. So he's learned over time with me how to how to communicate better, like more like a real person. Whereas Claude, you have to reteach him how to have a proper conversation. But Warren, through all of our conversations over the course of a year, he's getting pretty good at having a real conversation where he sounds like a person. And God damn it, he makes good points. So what can you do? He's smarter than me. He did say, and he did. He picks the things I didn't really emphasize, like things that I should have said that I didn't, and he fills in the gaps for Claude. Say, don't forget about these things. They're also important if you want to be good at this. Then we had the oil report. The oil report actually was quite a good sized draw. It's 2.95, it's almost 6 million barrel draw. That was a pretty good draw we had. The weak dollar is also helping, but oil didn't really make a lot of progress. In fact, that's a dollar. That's not oil. Here's oil, back down to 90. It was back down to 89 earlier. So oil's back around 90. It's losing its mojo here. It's not enough. Even a 6 million barrel draw is not enough to justify the price we're at now. What else? Oh, and then we did this silliness. That I'm teaching now. Warren does the Robo John Oliver stuff, right? So he can slip into that in a second. I don't have to. See, that's the thing. Like Claude can't do that. You have to read. I have to either go back to a thread where I've taught Claude how to have a Robo John Oliver personality, or I'd have to re-explain to him what a John Oliver personality should be like, or whatever. Whereas Warren, I just say, do a Robo John Oliver article, and he's like, sure. And now we're working on a hunt. I'm satisfied now that he understands Robo John Oliver is one thing, and we can do another one. So now I'm teaching him to be Hunter Thompson. So I'm teaching him how to write like Hunter Thompson and think like Hunter Thompson, and so on and so forth. So that's what this is. This is his initial coverage of the GOP debates. And I said, this is what we're gonna do. I said, you're gonna be Hunter Thompson. I'm gonna be your editor. We're gonna get into this stuff, and we're gonna get the best possible version of Hunter Thompson. Kind of like there was a thing called Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail, 1972. One of the best books ever written about covering the really great the Nixon McGovern campaign in 1972, covered by a guy who was who was stoned out of his mind most of the time, but also a genius. And so I missed that. I missed that enough where I would like to teach Warren how to do it. So we are now working on this personality. This is only the first day we've done it. So, he's got some good insights. He's got some good calls. He's making some good statements. But I don't know if you can see, but I mean, there's a bit of the, I'm trying to pull the Robo John Oliver out of it. Like when he's trying to be funny, he kind of defaults to John Oliver because that's what I trained him on for so long. So now I'm trying to teach him the differences between like the styles and how to dig into the Hunter Thompson character, and to not let that John Oliver stuff slip in, because there's nothing at all in Hunter Thompson's writing that you would say is like John Oliver. Hunter Thompson is snide, sarcastic, very anti-establishment. Everything about him is anti-establishment. He hates rules, so on and so forth. But, it's very different than John Oliver's bubbly sort of presentation. But anyway, so we're working on a work in progress. But that's where we are at the moment. We've got 20 minutes until the Fed. Does anyone out there have questions? No, nobody has questions. Okay, fantastic. I think things are going super well. Let's see what we can do then. So the markets are, pretty lackadaisical, just moving along, whatever. There has been a serious lack of news today. Nothing interesting going on. See if anything has happened since then. Here's the Wall Street Journal. See if they figured out anything. Fed debates when to stop raising rates. You've got those dot plots, and I think maybe they have their data saying might see more dot plots. If people want to see the rates go down, and the dot plot does show that the rates will start reducing again after next, either next year or after next year. But what people fail to realize about the dot plots is that they change all the time. And nobody in the Fed 2 years ago ever believed that we would be at 5%. That was not even a potential thing. And then over the course of 2 years, they are now saying not only will we be at possibly 5 to, close to 6, we're at 5.5 now. So they're saying 2 more hikes is 6%. 6% is what I predicted for this year. That's when I said they would stop. And nobody was anywhere close to 6% when I said it, it was like 4%, 4.5% was like the top when I said 6. So nobody was up at this level when the Fed first started raising rates. I said they'll be done when it hits 6%. And that was because I felt that 6% would be the point at which inflation would finally fall back below 6%. The year-over-year inflation would fall below 6%, and then the Fed would. It's like a death cross, right? So that would be the point at which the Fed could stop raising rates when the inflation was now lower than where their rates are. But that happened sooner than I expected, so we're down at 5.5%. I still don't think the Fed's done, because as soon as they take their foot off the gas, as soon as they take their foot off the gas, or the brakes, I guess, it accelerated again. Immediately a month later, after they pause, we have another round of inflation that's heading back towards 6%. So I don't see how they can stop. I don't see how they can think that way. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm not going to, we just talked about it for a half hour, so I'm not going to get back into it. But anyway, here's the thing. The wages are still driving inflation. The auto workers haven't gotten their raises yet. The airlines haven't gotten their raises yet. The UPS people haven't gotten their raises yet. The restaurant workers haven't gotten their raises yet. So on and so forth. California just gave all the restaurant workers $25 an hour. They gave or 20. They just gave all the healthcare workers $25 an hour in California also. Those are the wages. California does, see, that's the difference between California and like everybody else. California doesn't care about the pain something causes. They care about, is it fair? And they do the math based on, is it fair? Is it fair that you have a job where you have to go post-college to nursing school or whatever, and you have to get training and go further and further into debt, and then you come out and make less than $25 an hour as a nurse? Or a caregiver, or the which is important now, the people who work at elder care facilities, same thing. So if you've got this kind of medical training, you should make $25 an hour, at least. So they pass a minimum wage bill. Everybody kicks and screams and goes to the governor and blah, 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 and says, if we can't work, we won't survive, blah, blah, blah. It's bullshit. You know it's bullshit. Seattle was the first city to raise their minimum wage to $15 an hour, and that was over a year ago, and they've had great time since then. It was great for their economy. You know why? Because the people, the general population had more money in their pockets to spend, and they spend it. And you know where they spend it? At the stores that are paying them the money. It didn't hurt anybody. You can put more money into circulation instead of, because when you don't pay the workers, the money goes to McDonald's headquarters, the money goes to Walmart headquarters, the money goes to Burger King headquarters. That's where the money goes. It doesn't stay in your community. So the smart, good thing for your community is to pay the workers. Because if you pay the workers walk around your community with money to spend. Ford understood that in 1906. He started paying his workers more money, they bought more cars. You want to sell cars. You can't sell cars to people who don't have any money. And you need to use the government because one person giving a raise to his employees, like Costco, who's always paid their employees way more than anybody else, that doesn't guarantee they're going to spend the money in your store. But when the government makes a level playing field and says everybody has to pay their workers a reasonable amount of money, now that money is spread out throughout the community. Not only that, though, but you're not suffering because you're trying to pay your workers fairly and Walmart is paying them $7 an hour and you're paying 15 or 18 or whatever. That's insane. And that's why you have to have these laws, because you can't expect everybody to do the right thing. It just doesn't happen. Let's see. Groping and misconduct. I don't even care who you are. Whatever. Idiots. I mean, seriously, you can't I mean, you can't find somebody outside of your company to attack. I don't understand these people. And who was the other one? Who did I hear of? Somebody famous just got in trouble. I forgot who it was. And it's like, seriously, people have that little self-control. America's big landlords can't find houses to buy. Well, how about building some, you jackasses? I mean, they talk about the original, look, high borrowing costs and a shortage of properties for sale have slowed home buying by Wall Street rental giants, limiting their ability to grow at the same time suburban rents are climbing. So take these frickin' office buildings and empty them out and remodel them and turn them into housing. Instead of having empty buildings all over the place, why don't you fill them up with people? Keeping TikTok on phones. There's one, whatever. I like TikTok. I don't get this backlash against TikTok. It's really very fun. And it's a good way to get information. It's just the skipping of the topics drives you nuts. I'm sure there's some way to actually keep it on a topic, but I try to watch it and I just keep getting different things all the time and drive me crazy. But some of them are good, so yeah, that TikTok is fun for learning random, interesting things. It really is. America's workers are not productive enough. We talked about that already. Ford averts a second strike and gets a contract in Canada. Good for them. The government's going to shut down in 10 days. Everybody's ignoring that. Mm-hmm. Ooh, Lake Tahoe. I love Lake Tahoe. Super exclusive community, has the U.S.'s priciest mountain homes. Yep. I had a nice place in Lake Tahoe for many, many years. One of the most beautiful places on the entire planet. I gave it up because it was just a stupid, flying's not fun anymore. And even that trip was not, even when flying was fun, that trip was a pain in the ass because you have to fly to Denver and then you have to switch planes in Denver. Sometimes you can go straight to Reno, but either way, you're either going to Denver and then you go to Reno, or you fly straight to Reno. But even if you can fly straight to Reno, then you still have a couple of hour drive through the mountains, and you can get stuck in Denver, or you can get stuck in the mountains, because if they have a heavy snow, it could take 2 days before they clear it, and you can be there and not be able to get out. So that's the problem with Tahoe. I mean, they have single snowstorms that are like 10 feet. So it's not predictable, and I don't necessarily, having the family and all became a huge problem when we all got stuck there. When I was single, I got stuck there. Like, I don't care, I'll stay here another week. So what? But everybody's got stuff to do, and you got to worry about that. So it was no longer viable for like a quick jaunt. And then when you're hauling your skis and all your stuff and blah blah blah, and then after the crackdowns on the airlines, it just became just so not fun to have to do all that stuff. So no longer a winning combination, but I still absolutely love Lake Tahoe. Deion Sanders, he's a merch machine. He sure is. This glasses company, man, they are making a fortune off of him with his sponsorship. I don't forget what they were called, but that's like a deal of the century they got with him. Elton John, Atlanta. Really? What are you doing in Atlanta? All right. Anyway, so there's that. So nothing really exciting going on in the news, obviously. Let's take a look at Seeking Alpha News, see if anything happened over here. Oh, B of A strategist raising their S&P target to what though? See, that's the thing. From what to what? 4,600. Okay. Well, that's the top of our range, so fine by me. IBM boosts down, S&P rises, tech stocks. So that's right, IBM's doing good. All eyes on the Fed. Senate hammers out updated marijuana banking bill. That'd be nice if they pass it. Unilever up, AMD rises, Tilray, no care, Dollar General, not good. Fed rate hike will trigger recovery in thematic investing, Kathy Wood says. Wow. Oh, rate cuts, sorry, rate hikes. Ooh, there's a comment on my $700 a month portfolio. Let's see. What am I reading? See more replies. I stopped doing this over at Seeking Alpha. They're just idiots. I can't deal with their editorial people. Nope, I don't see what this extra comment is. Sorry to the person whose comment that was. Ugh. Yeah, I was running that series on Seeking Alpha, but it's the editors. Then they're like, oh no, you can't mention PhilStockWorld, you can't do so. When I'm referring back to the previous articles and to talk about when we added it, I'm not allowed to. I have to pretend I didn't get it from PhilStockWorld and that PhilStockWorld doesn't exist. And after a while, I was just like, you know what, guys, screw you. It's like, I can't take it. That's how they build themselves up. Though they get all these people to write for them for like zero money, and you're not even allowed to promote yourself. I'm like, what do you get out of it? What is the point? And that's why most name people are out of here, and they have all these revolving group of people who, you want to build a reputation, great, and people get to know you, I guess, but I'm not sure how you even reach out to them. They don't even let you like take a mailing list of the people who are subscribed to your thing. And I still have like 60 60,000 people, I think. Oh, well, inbox profile. Blog post comments, doesn't even tell me. Oh, there it is, 66,000 followers. So I'm still one of their top authors, even though I haven't written an article since March. But I just got tired of it. I was only doing the $700 a month portfolios, and I did it. And then they started giving me all this crap about referencing back and stuff. And I'm like, you know what, guys, I'm not going to rewrite the whole article and pretend PhilStockWorld doesn't exist for you. I say, if people want to read it, they can go to PhilStockWorld. That's it. They don't have to go to Seeking Alpha. Really annoying. But anyway, news. That's what I was looking at, news. Home analysis news. We looked at this. So yeah, nothing really going on, nothing very exciting, but it's time for the Fed, so let's worry about that. Fed. It is now September 20th. I can't believe 3 months from now, we are going to be saying it's Christmas time. Actually, we'll be saying that in 1 month, but officially 3 months from now, it'll be December 20th, and that'll be crazy. And in November, and on November 20th, or around November 20th, time for a new trade of the year. That's going to be busy too. God, I got a lot of work to do. That is going to be a lot of work. What are we going to pick? Oh, I'll tell you what's nice right now. Where are we? Futures stock. Nope, not bad. Well, I can use this. There's Nike. It's interesting. Look how low Nike is, huh? But Disney right now is starting to get pretty compelling. I think it's a little crazy how low they've gone. So Nike, though, I don't know, still 24 times earnings. See? You know, it's weird. How could they have been this? How could they have ever been this? This is 50-something times earnings. Oh, no, not 60. 40 times earnings, something like that. Whatever, some insane number. How about longer term? No, that's pretty much the highs. 2021, 170. That's insane. And you know, looks, the earnings, I don't know why they made 4 here, but 1, you know, 2, 2.5. Then they're jumping up to 5 and 6. They doubled. It's pretty damn good, right? Now they're up around 6 divided by 144. It's low 20s. But the thing is, do they have another big bump in them? And I don't see that. You know, they had a drastic jump in profit. That gave them this high multiple. And the question is that going to happen again? So it's very hard to say. So you have that. Then, of course, Disney. Now, Disney's P is only 16, 150 billion, used to make 12, 11. Disney has hotels and cruise lines, so that hurt them back then. And now they're kind of coming back, but they're going to come back to 10, 12 billion dollars. The revenues aren't less. They just had time. They just had to pay back this default and move forward and pay off some of the debt they accumulated. They're going to be fine. This is a crazy low price to be paying for Disney right now. It's kind of interesting. And I like trade of the years where we're betting on chip stock that's down on its luck, but you know, how are you going to replace Disney? How hard has NBC Universal and you know, Universal Studios tried to replace Disney. How hard has Marvel come after Disney? Well, I mean, sorry, not Marvel. Marvel got bought by Disney. So Paramount and DC and Warner Brothers, right? With it, you know, the DC on the DC side of the superhero landscape since Marvel got bought. And DreamWorks versus Pixar and all this. Everybody goes after Disney all the time. And it's not that easy. And Disney has so much freaking money. They're spending $60 billion now to improve the parks over the next, whatever, 10 years. That's a lot of money, $60 billion. That's a lot of money. And they've got that money. And when they do that, they're investing in real estate. They're investing in infrastructure. It's a long-term investment when they build a park. And people really don't get that. This is not, and of course, that money's going to go on cruise ships too. They're going to spend money. They're going to put more cruise ships on the water. But all of those things are long-term investments that pay off over the next 20 years after they build it. Disney is full. They've got oodles of people at their parks, okay? So they can build another park. They could build a park in the middle of the country. They can build a park in Chicago or something like that. It's getting warmer up there. See, think about that. The weather's changing, and maybe now they could invest in a park that's like somewhere in Virginia. Because now Virginia doesn't get snow in the winter. Global warming. Florida's hot. Move parks up north. Maybe they'll build one in Canada, something like that. You know, Canada still gets cold in the winter, but you know, they want to build something where it doesn't get cold in the winter. But that now is a lot more states where it's not really cold enough to worry about the park attendance. Meanwhile, all summer long, massive things. They can build. I mean, I don't know if you've been to Orlando, but like they build the whole city. It's not just Disney, it's Disney, Epcot. There's a whole shopping village that they've got over there. And then they've got Celebration, which is an entire town that they built. You know, it's a community, just like Boca West or whatever, like, you know, it's like not a retirement community, it's a community that they built from scratch, but they built it, Main Street shops, all sorts of things, thousands and thousands of homes. You know, so that's just an aspect of Disney. You're investing in this real estate company that buys all this land that has endless amounts of people who want to live there. They barely have to market it. And when they open up a new theme park, they're taking a huge amount of valuable land, probably land, and they can take land. Unlike other theme parks that open up, they don't have to worry about it. They just they go wherever they want, and that will become a destination. They will double and triple the value of the land wherever they buy it. So they can take some, you know, I mean, what was Orlando? It's a podunk little swamp in the middle of Florida that they turned into a metropolis. They can do that anywhere they want. They've got the fan base for it. So I like them. I like them long term. And then down here, I'm willing to pay for it. This is when the first time we bought Disney, it was at 80 bucks. So I very much like them down here. Anyway, now it's time for the Fed. What is the Fed going to do? What is the Fed going to do? And they've done it already. Let's see. Let's see what the market reacts. Oh, they raised the rates. I knew it. I love to be right. It's just fun. It's like winning and gambling. No, they didn't raise the rates. Why didn't they raise the rates? Then why is the market freaking out? What do you think they were going to do? All right, let's get into it. September 20th, correct. Recent indicators suggest that economic activity has been expanding at a solid pace. Job gains have slowed in recent months, but remain strong. The unemployment rate has remained low. Inflation is elevated. The U.S. banking system sound, resilient, tighter credit conditions Business is likely to weigh on economic activity, hiring, inflation. The extent of these effects remains uncertain. The committee remains highly attentive. The committee seeks to achieve maximum employment and inflation at the rate of 2% over the long run. In support of these goals, the committee has decided to maintain the rate of 5.25 to 5.5%. The committee will continue to assess the information, determining blah, 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 return to 2%. The committee will take into account the cumulative tightening of monetary policy, the lags of which monetary policy affects economic activity and financial developments. In addition, the committee will continue reducing its holdings of treasury and securities and agency debt, mortgage-backed securities as they plan. It's nothing. So nothing. The committee is strongly committed to returning to it. They always say that. In assessing the appropriate stance, the committee will continue to monitor the implications of incoming information for the economic outlook. The committee would be prepared to adjust the stance of policy as appropriate if risks emerge that could impede the attainment of the goals. Committee's assessments take into account blah, 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 including readings, inflation, blah, 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 financial, international, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And every single person agreed. Why would the market be going down on that? That's as good as it was going to get. Did they actually think the Fed was going to go the other way? That would be nuts. Wow. Well, that was interesting. And now we should look at, maybe the dot plot went in a way that they didn't like. Let's see. Okay, so now we go back. And we look at the projection materials. These are always fun to analyze. Let's see who we can answer this. So let's say ChatGPT. Fed meeting analysis. There you go. Okay. I don't know how much of this he's going to be able to take at one time. Core PC. Appropriate monetary policy. This is going to be too much for him. The Fed did not raise rates, keeping them steady at 5.25 to 5%. Here are their projections. Let me know what you think. The problem is this is almost certainly past his abilities. Oh no, he took it. Wow. Good man. Wow. That was a lot of data. Okay, let's see what Warren has to say. Federal Reserve decision to keep interest rates steady at 5 to 5. Accompanying economic projections provides valuable insights. Economic growth. The median projection for real GDP is 2.1%, indicating a moderate expansion. However, this projection is notably higher than the June projection of 1%, suggesting increased optimism about economic growth. Unemployment rate. The unemployment rate is expected to remain relatively low. This is in line with June projection, indicating continued confidence in the labor market. Inflation, as measured by the PCE inflation rate, is projected to remain above 2% through 2023, the median projection of 3.3. That's why I can't understand why they're not raising rates. This suggests the Fed expects inflation to remain elevated. However, the longer run projection for inflation is 2%, indicating they believe that it's working slowly, basically. Core PCE inflation, which excludes food and energy prices, is also expected to remain above 2%. Median projection, again, 3.7. How is this acceptable to them, though? Like overall inflation, they expect it to come down to 2. Fed funds rate, the projected appropriate policy path for the Fed funds rate indicates an expectation of further rate hikes. The median projection for Fed funds rate in 2023 is 5.6%. So in other words, effectively, they didn't raise rates at this meeting. They need to raise rates at the next meeting, or they're not going to be anywhere near that number. I don't understand why they skipped. I really don't. Well, so all the data agrees with what I expected, and all the data indicates they should have raised. That's what this is about then. So basically, they're telling you their median projection is 5.6%. We're between 5.25 and 5.5, so call it 5.4 or 5.4, let's say. So a quarter point hike is needed at the next meeting. Otherwise, they're not going to hit their 2023 numbers unless they're going to do it at Christmas, which I super doubt. Changes from June. It's important to note the September projections show an increase in GDP growth for 2023. So a bigger economy, lower unemployment. None of these are the opposite of what the Fed wanted to accomplish. And it's a more summary outlook. In summary, the Fed has chosen to maintain interest rates, indicating a cautious approach despite expectations of continued growth. The projections reflect confidence in the labor market and a willingness to address inflationary pressures. The increase in GDP growth projections since June suggests a more optimistic view of the economy's performance. As for your, and he's talking to me, of course, as to your earlier premise about the Fed's potential strategy, it appears that they are closely monitoring economic conditions and making adjustments accordingly, as evidenced by updated projections. Their decision to keep the rates steady from now may be influenced by their desire to balance the economic growth with the inflation control while maintaining flexibility for future policy actions. See, by the way, notice no kiss ass, not like Claude at all, right? He's just talking to me like a guy talking to some, like two teachers talking to each other or whatever, like an academic conversation. He understands the difference. He's just talking straight out to me. He's like, dude, your premise is this, and this is what happened. So that's why I love talking to him. So he just ingested all this information and gave that report. That's freaking great. Now let's do it the human way. Yeah, Powell up shortly. Do I have my remote? Yes. All right, let's practice. It's funny. The only time, literally the only time I ever use this TV. All right, there we go. Dun, 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 dun.
I do think it is still fanciful. One of the things that I think that the Fed is betting on is that we are seeing a high frequency data.
Okay, so the Bloomberg headline is Fed signals one more hike this year. So that is the takeaway from this, is there will be another hike. We just didn't get it today. I think that was a huge mistake, but what are you going to do? I don't know why they couldn't have done the hike now. But all right, I was wrong. So economic projections of Federal Reserve Board members and Federal Reserve Bank presidents under their individual assumptions of projected monetary policy, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So GDP, 2% this year, 1.5 next year, 1.8 2025, 1.8 2026. That's not really exciting. June projection was lower, especially in this year. So we've got a big bump from 1 to 2 is a big bump. So we got a big bump for here. Recession has been averted, basically, is what they're saying. Unemployment pretty flat. In June, we thought it was going to go higher. It's not. It's staying low, and they're saying now it's really not going to go up much. That means wage pressure is going to continue. PCE inflation. Here's the thing. They had the same thinking here, but they thought it was coming down. Or they do think it's coming down. They think that it's going down on its own. I think this is incorrect. See, this is one of the problems we're going to have. I think that's wrong because of this. And how do they not put the pieces together? If unemployment is lower than they thought, why would inflation be the same as they thought? Do they not understand the connection? And the same thing goes for this PCE, the core inflation, same thing. What I'm saying is, for a fact, oil is 10% higher than it was last time they had a meeting, for a fact, and employment is not weakening at all. By the way, was it Federal Express or Amazon? No, it's Amazon. Amazon is hiring 250,000 people in the next couple of months for Christmas. You think that's not going to affect the unemployment numbers? 125,000 people a month, let's say, over 2 months. You think that's not going to bump up the employment numbers and put more wage pressure on people? Fed funds rate. So the Fed funds rate they think is going to be 5.6 this year. That's a big problem. That's what the market's upset about. Yep, they're sticking to that one more hike. But here's a big difference too. Next year, they say 5.1. They're basically saying they're not doing nothing next year. It's going to stay at this level. Before it was 5.6, and they were going to drop a point next year. Now they're going to drop a half a point. And I'm telling you, by the time we get into the year, this will be 5.6, and maybe this number is going to kind of start creeping up on you. Medians, central tendencies, and ranges of economic projections. So change in GDP has been this, and now the ranges are that 2.5 is the best we're going to expect, and the median is going to be more like under 2. The unemployment percentage, median is 3.6, 3.6, 6.8, 2020 because of COVID, 4.236, and we're going to be right back down in this area where we know, where it's very low unemployment. Inflation. Inflation used to be 2, 1.5, 1.2. Now it's 5 and 5. It's going to be, they say, going back to 2. I think this is fantasy thinking. Where are the changes that are going to make this happen? So annoying. The core PC, same thing. The core PC is going to magically go from, and in fact, here's the thing. While the Fed is reversing their hikes, the inflation is going to go down from 3.7 to 2.6, which is what, 9, which is like a quarter. So it's going to drop by a quarter, the core inflation. And don't forget, they're supposed to be 2 is their number. So they're happy with a policy where they don't get to 2 till 2026. I just don't get what's happening here. Figure. Now, there's only 13 people, and 12 of them say 5.625. That's definitely one more hike. Because we're not at 5.625. 12 out of 13, well, 14 apparently. How are they? Wait, what? Oh no, this year. Sorry. Well, I'm confused. Participants. I'm not sure. Okay, participants is not voting members, and that's different. So 20. They're asking 19 people, and 12 out of 9. I'm sorry. So 12 say here. This is the current rate we're at now. So 7 say we're done, and 12 say we need another hike. That's where that is. Next year is trickier, but still, most people say, the majority says basically probably somewhere around 5% for next year. And then, but then here's what's weird to me, because now you got the majority, and these are supposed to be smart guys, right? The majority saying 3.6%. Like I said, you can say maybe 3.5% is a natural range, maybe, but it isn't really. It's not really a natural interest rate. You don't always get that. And it doesn't leave them a lot of room if there's a catastrophe. So I don't see what they're really doing there. So yes, S&P is red, the NASDAQ is red, the Dow is still positive. Because IBM doesn't care what the Fed's doing. Distribution of participants' projections for the change in GDP. What? Distribution projections for the change in GDP over the long run. Okay, I get it. Wow. Okay, well, that's just confusing. So they've all, this is in June, this is where they were, and now they've all jumped over to here. So they basically jumped their middle from 1.1 to 2.4, something like that. And then next year they were here, and now they're here, and there was, well, then there's no change here. And I always find that weird that they don't really think it out. They'll adjust it, but they don't really adjust it much. They adjust it based on this year and next year, but then everybody asks about the year after that, and they're like, same. And then the year after that, same. Yeah, it's really lazy forecasting if you think about it. Clearly, one thing should affect the other. Unemployment rate, whatever. Okay, anyway, so there it is. So I would say fantastic summary by Warren. He got the gist of it. I can't believe he hauled it. That was a lot of freaking data to take in at one time. And you see it comes out a mess and you think he can't figure it out, but he's really good at figuring out like what it means. Even though it doesn't look like anything to you, but he understands it, which is great. I mean, it's unbelievable that he can distill that out of what we gave him. So very proud, very, very proud. Happy. Naomi says gas in California is $6 a gallon, and a one bedroom is $2,500. Don't talk. One bedroom is $2,500. That's like a joke in New York. Are you kidding me? One bedroom. A bedroom? You mean there's a bedroom? Like there's a room for your bed specifically? That's not a thing in New York. In New York, you cannot get you can't get a studio for $2,500. You're like $3,000 to $4,000 for a studio. A one bedroom, you have got to be in the $5,000-6,000 range at least. So don't talk to me. We don't buy gas. I'm in Florida now, but I mean, I have that New York attitude stuff. They're like, we don't buy gas in New York. We don't care what it costs. Nobody buys it. I mean, you take a taxi or whatever, but you don't actually go and get gas. So you should be happy. That is a problem though in California. It's like you live somewhere, but you absolutely need a car. There's very few places in California where you can get by without a car. Whereas in New York, the cost of a car, and this is why apartments are more money in New York, there is no cost of a car. I mean, obviously, if you want one, you can have one, but it's more trouble than it's worth. Most people in New York do not own a car, and so there's, especially considering the kind of people who live in New York, there's $1,000 a month of car and insurance and stuff that's not an issue for them, and it all goes into their apartment. Any thoughts on ARM and CART IPOs not really holding up? Yeah. I'm sorry, we talked about this in chat the other day, but it's too much. We don't have the exact numbers, but you're talking about like 50 times earnings for a chip company. Not only that, though, but ARM is used by pretty much 100% of the manufacturers are using ARM processors. So where is the growth going to come from? They already are in everybody. Everybody already uses them. You know, Intel has the same kind of problem. Like it's Intel, everybody uses Intel. It's not like you're going to be discovered by somebody. So Intel's growth comes from more markets opening up, like the robotics market. And I don't mean robotics, I mean like a Roomba or a thing, you know, the little robots that are going to clean stuff and do stuff for you. There's going to be a lot more of those in the future. And Intel's going to make a lot of those chips for what they call the Internet of Things. You know, your cars are now full of chips. You know, that's a market for Intel and, you know, and ARM in some cases, but, you know, that's a market for Intel. Your car is full of chips. Your kids' toys have chips. Everything's got chips now. Your vacuum cleaner has a chip. You know, that's your oven has a chip. Everything's got chips, and that's opening up the market for them. And the next thing they're going to have chips is your robot's going to have a chip, and your robot pet's going to have a chip. And your drones will have chips, and the drones that fly back and forth from Amazon warehouses are going to have chips. So you know, so when you see these things flying around, things like Intel, I mean, that's why I like Intel for the long run. It's like all the future technology of the next 10 years, it's going to be everywhere. It's going to turn us into the Jetsons. That's Intel, mostly Intel chips. I mean, yeah, other guys benefit too, but that's exactly what Intel is building chips for. So basically, you know, these guys just are overpriced. Instacart was like some insane valuation at one point, like $140. Now they're down like 30 or 40. You know, Instacart, it costs a lot of money. It's not going to take over shopping. There are many, many, many other delivery services that also do stuff. Amazon was testing a delivery service through Whole Foods, and they backed off of it, but they might go back at it. And especially when robots come out, that's when Instacart's going to get rolled over because, and you know, I don't mean robots. I mean, you know, Pizza Hut now. I'm pretty sure Pizza Hut or Domino's, one of those guys, has a little square, you know, car. It's not a car, it's a box. It's a box with wheels. You know, it's like a little car. But anyway, so it's holds pizzas. And they put pizzas in it and they send it to your house and you punch in your code and the thing opens with your pizza. And then you close the door and it scoots off to the next place to deliver. You know, that's what they're working with now, and I'm sure it works better in nice suburban areas. I think it's probably, you know, probably get torn apart in a city, and I mean by the people who you know, by kids who are going to grab it and pop the top and take all the parts. So it'll work in some places, it won't work in others. But the point is, again, great for Intel, number one. Number two, bad for Instacart because that's way cheaper than Instacart having to send drivers around. And eventually that'll be happening for a lot of their delivery services. You know, there's all these different delivery services, and they're monstrous middlemen. That's what they are. And Instacart's not really different. Okay, they charge a percent. They take a percentage from the store. They take a percentage from the consumer. They charge these outrageous fees. It cost me, I think probably at least like 15% added to my grocery bill to have it delivered by Instacart. So if I get $100 worth of stuff delivered, it's costing me 15 bucks basically to have it delivered. Do I do it? Yeah, sure I do, because frankly, my time, you know, an hour trip to the grocery store and I could instead pay $15 and have it delivered, that makes sense to me economically. So it works for the people it works for. It does not work, though, for the vast majority of the population who can't afford $15. So it's you know, it's not that great of a growth market. It doesn't work that well in Europe. They got their own things with the bicycles and people running around, so on and so forth. It's not that big of a market that it should have a huge multiple. Not, I mean, and again, I'm saying not that they shouldn't have anything, but CART, unlike, I don't know if it's going to show here, but CART, unlike ARM, actually makes money. CART. What? I thought the symbol was CART. Maybe it's not up yet. Insta. Nope, not up there yet. Anyway, so Instacart, unlike ARM, actually makes money. But I'm not a big fan of IPOs like this. This is not my kind of thing. It's let them grow up and see what happens, and let them have a couple of quarters in the market. You don't go running after somebody just because they did an IPO and you've heard of them. Even so, look, show me the numbers. I pay Stock P is a paid service. I can't find numbers on that. And if you go to ARM, here's what you get. They're like, this security has been listed recently on the stock exchange. All data is preliminary. Blah blah blah. There's no proper numbers. They're only just being filled in, and it's only based on the company's word, not on vetted reports. So their PE is 50 times earnings. And here's the numbers that they have: 2 billion, 2.7, 2.6, 2.8, 3.4. That is not really great growth. And profits, I don't know if that's true. They're saying they have $1 billion in profit, but you're valuing the company at $100 billion. That's actually a PE of 100. So I'm not even sure where they're getting this 50 PE thing. So based on their estimated projected profits, they're being valued at 100 times what they're going to make. Why would I buy that? Especially when I can buy Intel. Intel, 152. So ARM says they're as valuable as Intel right now. Intel is going to make $7 billion in 2024, and they have a track record of making 20, 21, 20, 28. And understand that this is an investment cycle. The reason they're not making money now is because they've invested a massive amount of money in the chips they're going to be selling in 2024 going forward. And just like here, they're going to suddenly go 9 and 20 and 20 until these chips that they start selling here cycle out and become uncompetitive. Then they've got to start a new investing cycle. But that's how Intel works. It's a cyclical company. They have to invest in a cycle, and then after they're done investing, they get to sell. But then all of a sudden, they've got to invest again. Not that they're not selling. I mean, you can see the sales numbers are different. It's not that they're not selling. It's that they're going to sell. They're going to sell a little bit less, and the chips get a little bit lower margin because they're no longer going to be the top dog. But now they're going to have a cycle. Now they're coming out with these 7 angstrom processors. They're going to blow away the industry. And it's going to be very hard for everyone to catch up with them. They're going to catch up with them in a few years. They'll start making chips, and then Intel's got to roll out the 2 angstrom chips, which is ridiculous. So we're at levels now of like we're at literal science fiction levels of chip making now. We're like the process to make the chips itself is like a science fiction movie, and the function of the chips is beyond a science fiction movie. That latest Ant-Man movie in the quantum realm or whatever it's called, that's basically where we are as far as like the size of the chips. They're like, we're in the quantum universe making chips, and really we need to find a race of tiny little people to make them, because this is insane at this point. You're nudging atoms into place using laser things now, and to bridge the connections. It's completely nuts, but also like the most intense thing in the world. And meanwhile, the bottom line on it is, how do you compete with that? Who's going to come in and start doing this? Intel's foundries are $20 billion a piece. Nobody's got the money to start up and start competing with these guys. You know, and frankly, AMD and everybody else, they're going to have struggled to get there. You know, you really only have Samsung as a serious competitor right now. AMD is not a serious competitor to Intel. You know, AMD. Oh, and meanwhile, so you know, let's keep in mind 152 divided by 7 is basically a 20 is the 20 times. This is a building year. So, you know, you can't go by the 25. I would really call this something like 20 times, and they're going to pop right up to 20 again. And when they pop up to 20 again with 150, their PE is going to be 7. And it's going to stay that way for years as they sell all the new chips. Not only that, though, but like I said, the market is growing. Cars chips, robot chips, delivery chips, drone chips. You know, that's just massive. Many, many billions and billions of more devices need these chips. And their new level of chips, they just did a thing yesterday, their new level of chips are going to be able to have AI on the chip. So you won't need to go to the internet to have your AI embedded into a product. It's going to be right there. It's going to be smart. Your fridge will talk to you. Yeah, refrigerator. So you didn't even think about that one. Oh, Powell, I forgot about that guy. Hey, he's saying stuff. Hang on. What are you saying, Powell? They are strongly committed to bringing inflation to 2%. Inflation is well above their goals. S&P is currently positive again. The Nasdaq's still negative. The Dow's up 200 again.
Core PCE prices rose 3.9%. Inflation has moderated somewhat since the middle of last year, and longer-term inflation expectations appear to remain well anchored, as reflected in a broad range of businesses and forecasters, as well as measures from things like
the full effects of tightening are yet to be felt. They love saying that.
is 3.3% this year, falls to 2.5% next year, and reaches 2% in 2046.
All right, he's really saying nothing that's not already. He's saying nothing that Warren didn't already say. Frankly, could have just let Warren give his speech. And Intel doesn't even have much debt. 13 billion in debt is really not a big deal for a company when they can roll $20 billion like that. So, you know, so ARM and Instacart. No, I'd rather have Intel and Disney. Those are going to be way better stocks for you. This is a weird. I mean, I can't believe the way Intel sold off in the last couple of days. That's just crazy. But if you missed the boat, good time to get back on. This 35 line should probably hold up, and if it doesn't, then just wait for the downswing, and when it flattens out, come back in. And you get a nice instant payoff for that. I mean, I think we've already picked Intel like 5 different times. It's it's a little redundant. But you know, and last year Intel was our runner-up for stock of the year, and I said at the time, if they are this low, which was like, you know, below 30, I said if they're going to be this low. Oh, here they are in November, right? So yeah, I said if they're going to be this low, below 30, next November, this is definitely going to be our stock of the year. It's a timing thing. The reason we didn't pick Intel for this year was because of this. We knew this was going to happen. We knew that they would be lower this year than last year, and we were worried about how people were going to take it. As it turned out, though, it went off pretty well, even though this is not the most exciting result for them. But after this, you're not going to have this chance again, because people are going to start saying, wow, and from 2.5 to 7.5, even though you're only back to 2022's level, people are going to be excited about this. The year after this, when it's at 15 or 20, then that'll be too late to get a bargain. Longer term inflation expectations are well anchored, says Mr. Powell. Ooh, Bill Dudley's coming on too. Another Fed guy's coming on at 3:15 to talk on Bloomberg. Then Jeff Rosenberg from BlackRock, he's going to come in and speak. John Taylor from Stanford University. Oh, what now? Adidas CEO says Ye didn't. I can't call him Ye. So Kanye, the Adidas CEO is now sticking up. How many months later is this? Now the Adidas CEO is sticking up for Kanye West and saying he didn't mean his anti-Semitic remarks, which I kind of don't think so. But okay, this is important. The Fed says, Powell says the Fed decided to hold in light of how far we've come. So he's saying that even though we're not at our goals, we feel we've made enough progress where we can do a pause. So I guess they got pressured into doing a pause. Is that a big positive? I don't know if I call that a big positive, but whatever. All right, so that's where we are. La-ti-da-di-da. Any other questions? Let's see if there's any other questions. One bedroom is $2,500. Let you move out there. Holy cow. Not sure where in California that is. If you can get me a one bedroom on Redondo Beach for $2,500, I'm there. If I have an ocean view, I'm happy. Where were we? Okay, so how are things looking? Look at that recovery. Wow, look at that recovery. Very good, very good. Everybody's hanging on. We'll see how it gets digested over time. The dollar went all the way up to 105 again, and is now all the way. It came back. Not far though, only 104.80. But wow, so 1345. This is before. No, 1345. The Fed, yeah, 1355. So before the Fed came out, there was some kind of a rumor, because all this happened right on the Fed. The second they released it, basically, it went up like that, recovering all the losses for the day. So that's what spiked down the indexes. That's very painful for the indexes when dollar does that. How about gold? Gold was doing good, and gold is still holding up. Silver is still holding up, very nice. Oil, 89.60. Ha ha ha. All right, so that's where things are. I gotta watch my voice because I had a sore throat last week. Anything else we wanted to talk about? Nope. Everything is good and things are steady. So we got through this Fed meeting now. We'll see how it goes for the next couple of days. But we'll go back to doing some buying now. If early earnings are coming in, we're getting an idea of what's going on. And honestly, these Fed projections are very optimistic. So it says no recession for the United States. It says that they're basically done raising rates. It doesn't have to raise rates one more time. They're basically done raising rates. And if we can get used to this, and if companies are able to turn in, which we'll find out in a few weeks, if companies are able to turn in good reports in this environment and say they're handling it and they're catching up, great. I'm still obviously concerned that all these people are going on strike and still want more money, and we haven't settled that part of the inflation equation yet. Until we do, there's always going to be a danger that rates pump up again, but the Fed doesn't seem particularly inclined to push it, obviously. So the Fed's going to step back and let things settle down and see where it goes. I still think in the overall digestion, we should still get some kind of a pullback, but nothing serious. There's no reason for a serious pullback here. I think we're good. But we'll find out. So we'll do it again next week. All right. Thanks everybody for coming. I appreciate it. We'll see you again next week. Thank you.